So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the Samanalawata kuti, which is a beautiful cave kuti here. It's been built into a cave, so I had the good fortune to stay here for about a week. So I thought to record a short awada for the internet, so I thought that maybe I could start with a little meditation, so I can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath, can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If one breathes in a long breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a long breath. And if one breathes in a short breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a short breath. And one can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose, being aware of the breath all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, and as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to keep mindfulness as continuous as possible. And can let awareness expand till it fills one's whole body. And one of the metaphors they use for letting awareness expand throughout the body in the canon is like a lake with an underground source. And the water comes up from the underground source and fills the whole lake. In a similar way, one can let awareness expand until it fills one's whole body. And with awareness filling the whole body, one can practice whole body breathing. And when practicing whole body breathing, it can be helpful to change one's perception of the breath, so that it's not just air that one is pulling in and out of the lungs, but it's a kind of energy that's all around and coursing through the body. And it's possible to pull it into and out of every pore in one's body. Almost like the body was a big sponge. So in the in-breath, one can think whole body. On the out-breath, one can think, whole body. Okay, and can open our eyes and do a short Avada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody is having a great day wherever it might be. And yeah, I've had the opportunity to come out to this lovely secluded kuti. This is about, I don't know, maybe 500 meters into the forest. And it's in a cooler area of Sri Lanka. It's kind of up in a mountain. And very beautiful, kind of the mist comes over sometimes in the morning, and there's tea plantations outside. And when first came here, I had thought that, okay, I'm going to a solitary kuti. I'll be basically entirely on my own, and if anything goes wrong, up to me to to try to fix it. If I get sick or anything like that, I'll walk to the bus station or something, and. Maybe not that specifically, but yeah, well, basically was thinking along those lines. Maybe have to go back to the central monastery. It was interesting when I first came here. I'd arrived at the kuti, and a gentleman took me here, and he helped me sweep it out. And then it was about 5 p.m. and I hear this kind of knock. There's a knocker outside at the kuti, and these two people came, kind of grandmother, grandfather, and their young granddaughter, and they brought a flask of sweet tea with them. And then the following day, I think it was the following day or the day after, a whole bunch of people came and swept the road leading up to the kuti. And there's a house which is relatively close to the kuti, and the family there basically took responsibility for whatever monk is living in the kuti. And they, so I asked for some tea from them, and they gave me a whole bunch of tea, and I asked for a little sugar, and they gave me this big bag of sugar. So they kind of almost act like, I guess you'd say like a kapia, they call them kapia karus, people who make things allowable. In Sri Lanka, they act as like stewards or attendants for this kuti, and so it's been a really amazing experience to stay here alone. It was one of my, I guess you'd say kind of almost like a dream. To try to live in a kind of, you may be living in a cave. You kind of never expect that you might have the chance. Maybe you kind of think you might have the chance, but in Canada there aren't so many caves in the area of Ontario that I'm from, and also to stay there in a cave, would be very difficult to get permission from the government, or it might be very expensive. One might actually have to buy the land and then go live in the cave. But here the forestry department allows that. And so having this opportunity to stay in solitude has been wonderful. Kind of, there's no responsibilities other than sweeping the kuti. But one of the, I guess you say, like greater learning experiences here, I mean, definitely living in solitude has been wonderful, and hope to do again. But one of the greater learning experiences here has been seeing this aspect of Buddhist culture, of Sri Lankan Buddhist culture, and not just Sri Lankan. I mean, also same thing in Thailand, I imagine, same thing in Burma. This aspect of Theravada Buddhist culture where there's a community outside of whatever isolated place a monk might be living in, and that monk becomes a part of the community just by showing up there. And there's a kind of a culture, a structure, a culture of generosity that exists where people in that community are so well integrated that everybody kind of knows what's going on with one another, and people are very happy to help one another. So on alms round today, I went on alms round to a similar place. I've gone to the same place 2 days in a row now. And as I was passing by one house, the lady, they call out to each other. There's houses kind of close by. They say, I can't remember, they say kind of like nona or something like that. Or sometimes they say doni. I don't know what doni means. Maybe it means daughter. Sometimes they call to each other in the neighboring house. They'll say like due. And I'd originally thought that meant that their daughter was living in that house. But apparently any younger woman can be called daughter. Younger women are sometimes called daughter by the older women. And so they kind of call out and they say, oh, which means yes, and they say, hamuduro wadinawa, they kind of call out. And so there's this kind of system where they kind of let everybody in the village know that you're coming. So sometimes you'll be on your way back from a particular road, and people will be there waiting to offer you alms once again on your way back. So how did they know? They kind of called out. And so this kind of informal system of care is something that one can't really put a kind of dollar value on. It isn't measured in GDP. It's kind of, it wouldn't be something that shows up. It's not something that anybody is exporting. It's not something that one can measure. It's not something that you could necessarily put a dollar value on. And so it wouldn't show up in a measure of a country's wealth. It wouldn't show up in an objective kind of economic measure of that country's wealth. And yet this is a type of wealth that I've seen in Sri Lanka and in other Buddhist countries. It's kind of this wealth of caring, kind of wealth of sharing with one another, that people are on the lookout to see what it is that other people need, and then they're on the lookout to provide that. So this is actually one of the foundations that allows for there to be these kind of great monks in Asia. Asia has been the home to many great monks, many kind of esteemed bhikkhus. Kind of most recently there was this Thai forest tradition. And here in Sri Lanka, recently there was a monk who just passed away. His name was Nyanadipa Bhante, and I've said a little bit about him in the videos before. But he had this solitary practice of going in and basically almost establishing solitary kutis like this. And he did it for so many years that it's now become a feature of the Sri Lankan forest tradition. And an amazing thing. So these amazing monks, these amazing religious figures in Buddhism, they're made possible by this kind of underlying foundation of generosity. So when I first heard that Nyanadipa Bhante was doing these things, kind of going out and constructing kutis in the forest, how did he do it? Kind of, how do you live in the forest like that, kind of with nobody to support you? What if your kind of health becomes bad? What if How do you get permission from the forestry department? But coming here, one of the very inspiring things that I've seen is that it's not just say like the initiative of these monks. There's this, which is obviously important, but there's also this underlying informal network, this underlying informal Buddhist culture where people care about one another, and they care a lot about the monks who are there. It's kind of, they care a lot about people's health, about people's well-being, and if there's something that person needs, then they try to provide it, try to give what they can to sustain that person's life. And kind of, you feel this kind of care as part of the community, and then that makes one want to contribute as well. So these are things that are not written down in like a trade agreement. It's not something that's specified in a contract. It's not something that's established in a formal institution where there's paid employees. But one might say that there's this kind of informal Buddhist economy here. And Ajahn Thanissaro calls this the economy of gifts. It's kind of people engaging in exchange, not for explicitly for the sake of sensual pleasures, but they're engaging in an exchange of gifts, an exchange of giving, an exchange of generosity. And the currency of this, the reason why people do it, is to bring spiritual benefits to themselves, kind of to bring happiness to their minds, bring happiness to the minds of other people. And this is something that's a support for their mind, an ornament for their mind. And here in Sri Lanka, these kind of Buddhist countries, one of the nice things that one sees is that it doesn't even seem like the people are explicitly thinking about it and kind of gauging it before. They've just done it so often that it becomes second nature. Kind of, you see these small children, and they're taught from this very young age how to give, how to be generous, how to be kind, how to be supportive, how to fulfill the responsibilities in the relationships that they have with one another. And by the time these people become adults, it's just something that they do. It's part of the culture. One wouldn't think of it otherwise. But coming from, I guess you'd say, the culture that I was used to in Canada also has these elements to it. But there's a more formal exchange culture, a more formal culture of institutions where people are paid, a more formal culture of measuring wealth in terms of GDP, in terms of economic output. And this also creates a kind of perception in one's mind. But coming here to Sri Lanka, this has been one of the things that's been a kind of, I guess you say, kind of astounding for me, at least a little bit. Astounding to see the depth of people's generosity, astounding to see the strength of their communities, and astounding to see the foundation that this gives for the Buddhist religion. Because these extremely inspiring figures like Ajahn Mun, the figures in the Thai forest tradition, extremely inspiring figures like Nyanadipa Bhante. There's another monk, Nyanavimala Bhante, who was here in Sri Lanka. These figures that make Buddhism alive, even today, that give strength to the path, to the end of suffering, that give a kind of reality to it. It's kind of the refuge of the Sangha. This refuge is built on this informal culture, on something one can't measure. It's built on the generosity of people who want to show up to sweep the road to the kuti. It's kind of an amazing thing. I just figured I'll sweep the road to the kuti. People came and swept it out. Built on the care of people who want to know if there's any medicines you need. It's built on the care of people who will call out to each other, who will spread the word when someone in their village or their community is sick, who integrate a newcomer into their community and make them feel welcome, make them feel at home, and who provide this foundation so that there's the possibility for people to practice for the sake of Nibbana, There's the possibility for one to devote one's whole day, for one to devote one's whole week in solitude. Or even there are monks in Sri Lanka, monks in Thailand, monks in Burma who devote their lives to meditation. And in doing so, with this kind of system that exists, these are the people who become inspirations, kind of thinking of Nyanadipa Bhante, thinking of these masters in the Thai forest tradition, who inspire other people to go forth. I kind of remember when I was young, thinking, why aren't there any arhants in the world? And then this book about the Thai forest masters wandering in the forests of Thailand and practicing for nibbana, and then reaching it, kind of inspired me greatly to continue on. And kind of that there is a path available in the modern day to nibbana. So these informal things, these small things, kind of this practice of generosity, isn't something that one can overlook. If one wants to live in a culture where people care about one another, if one wants to live in a culture where one feels like one's part of a community, one feels like one's part of a system where there's goodness there, where there's kindness there, where there's a contribution that's being made not because people want money from one, not because necessarily people want some sensual pleasure from one, it's because people want their minds to be bright. They want an ornament for their mind, I guess you'd say. And kind of they value this generosity. Maybe they want the benefits of heaven or something like this, or maybe they do want some material benefits. But it's not explicitly to get it from you. It's kind of they want this kind of a good karma, the good results that come from generosity. One wants to live in a culture where there's these beautiful things, then one can't overlook this generosity. And also if one wants to live in a place, one wants to live in a time where there's real and living examples of people who are noble disciples of the Buddha, where there's real and living examples where one can meet, one can interact with people who don't just know the words of the Buddha, but who are living examples of what's possible to achieve in the Buddha's dispensation. Then one needs this culture of generosity. One needs this culture of care because these things are built on this foundation. And it's on this foundation that one can devote oneself. One can strive towards nibbana. It's on this foundation, on this ground, that the Buddha's path is built, the path to the end of suffering. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice. Pati Pati Saranai.